Thanks for being here. It's really inspiring to hear what everybody's been doing, and I'm going to tell you about some of the stuff that I've been doing. This is about why I ran for office and what I learned along the way. I'm going to, yeah, some of you already know me, but I feel like I should say a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from, in particular for this group. I mean, I could tell you all kinds of stories about, my life, how I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but mostly raised in Indiana and spent one very formative year in Sweden, but now I'm in New Orleans. But that would only give you a slice of the picture. For this particular group, I wanted to mention particularly that I've been a practitioner with Lamplight Circle here in New Orleans. In fact, I've just yesterday became the primary organizer for this kind of a pagan network based here in New Orleans. It's been around for almost 15 years now. And these are just a few photos of a few Lamplight events over the years. But more specifically, recently, my particular personal path, I guess you could say that I'm on, is the Gaian way, Gaianism. The idea of trying, I'm sure with this group, it needs little introduction. The idea of Gaia as the great mother, Mother Earth, the living earth. We try to keep Gaia at kind of the center of our practice. And you can learn more about that if you're interested on the web. Just Google Gaianism and you should find it. That is what has kind of informed my actions it tries to, I guess, reflect my deepest values in recent years, especially. So I wanted to say that that's kind of the deep background for who I am when I was asked to run for office. That's right, I was actually drafted. I mean, it sounds really ostentatious to say it that way. In reality, a couple people approached me. They've kind of formed a committee, an ad hoc committee. These are environmental and social justice advocates in New Orleans who kind of said, we need to recruit some people for this next election cycle. And they reached out to a number of people. And I was the only person who said yes. They asked me if I would run as a climate candidate in this upcoming election. And it come up a few times before because of various activism that I've been involved in over the years. But it always seemed like it was never the right time. And in particular, I always asked my family, my wife in particular, and she always said no. And she's a public school teacher. She's got enough stress in her life. But for some reason, this time she said yes. And I took that and I ran with it. So that was where I got started. I just said, okay, I'm going to, well, I'll tell you in a moment about the actual race that I ran in. First, let me show you this video. This was a video that shows me qualifying for office. Good morning. I'm Bart Everson. I'm here at Tulane and Broad to qualify for City Council at large.
And will you so affirm by fixing your signature here?
And so you're on Facebook Live here. Would you mind telling the audience why you're running?
Yes. I'm Bart Everson. I'm running for City Council at large, specifically to address the climate crisis, to get people talking about the most important issue facing humanity right now.
Thank you so much.
That needs to be at the forefront of all of our dialogue, action. And it's a silly little video. Silly little video, but I think it shows what my initial impetus was is like, if I can just inject this issue into the race, that's why I was running. So let me give you a picture of the race that I was actually in. It was for New Orleans City Council at large. And I went into it with a very clear understanding that this is basically an unwinnable race for someone like me. And I don't say that as a defeatist. I'm just saying, here's the other three people who are in the race. There was no incumbent. This was an open seat representing the entire city of New Orleans. So the two main people was J.P. Morrell, who you see there on the left, and Kristen Palmer, you see in the upper right. He was a former state senator and came from a kind of dynasty, local political dynasty. Kristen Palmer, a former district city council person, so sitting on the city council. And then also Jared Brissett, you see him in the lower right, also a district council person. They all actually come from political families to some extent or another. But JP and Kristen in particular had over $250,000 in their campaign fund before they even qualified for office. And they also previously held office. They have the name recognition. All three of these people had the name recognition. And so that's what I mean by saying an unwinnable race. Long odds. To call me a long shot would imply that I even had a shot. There's me, the little guy in the race with zero money to start with. Okay, so that just gives you a picture, though. I chose the race because I knew it would be the one, after consulting with other people, I figured it was the one that would get the most media attention. And that's what I was going for. If I couldn't really gain office, which would be a terrifying prospect, to be honest, I could inject this issue into the media coverage and the various forums and so forth. And I tried to sketch out what I felt were the biggest priorities, my policy priorities. I had to get my talking points straight. That was one of the first things that I wanted to do. And you'll see here a picture of the planet Venus. Believe it or not, that was my first talking point. I said, we need to look to the planet Venus. Why? Because they say the planet Venus used to have an Earth-like atmosphere, but its carbon dioxide in the atmosphere led to a runaway greenhouse effect, and it's no longer a habitable planet by our human standards. And so I feel like Venus is an example of that we should not take the habitability of our planet for granted. Okay, so that sounds really far out and crazy, but what about specific policies? I felt like there were three. I just wanted to boil it down to three specific policies that I wanted to talk about the most on the campaign trail. Number one was to hold Entergy accountable. Entergy is our local utility, which is regulated by the New Orleans City Council, kind of a unique arrangement. We need to hold them accountable for clean energy that doesn't contribute to the global warming problem. Number two, we need to improve our transportation options because we know that moving people and goods around is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases, to air pollution. Number three, we need to decarbonize the local economy. And that opens up the idea of like a Green New Deal. It's a whole can of worms. Without getting into any detail about any of those, I will show you this 90-second video I made of me talking about policies. We've all seen the news. We know climate change is real. We know it's caused by humans. We know we can limit the damage with bold and immediate action. But many of us feel disempowered. Sure, we can make lifestyle changes, but we know that's not enough. We need collective action. That's why I'm running for City Council at large here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Here's just a few things the City Council must prioritize to put New Orleans at the forefront of meeting this challenge. We need to hold Entergy accountable for providing the clean energy they've promised. We need better transportation options in the city and regionally, including especially a system of public transit that is clean, safe, and efficient, as well as accessible and affordable to all. And we need a Green New Deal for the city of New Orleans. Let's take the lead in the American South, creating jobs and engaging youth to get our economy on a new carbon-free footing. You know, our city is one of the most vulnerable in the world to rising sea levels, more intense hurricanes, and other impacts of climate change. Everything we love here is at risk. But if we come together for sensible science-based solutions, we can make a difference. Please visit barteverson.com to learn more about specific policy proposals and sign up for the campaign newsletter. Maybe make a contribution to help our team get the message out to more people. Thank you. We've all seen the news. So if I seemed a little bit nervous while I was making that presentation, it might have been because Hurricane Ida was actually in the Gulf bearing down on New Orleans. In fact, it made landfall, I believe, the next day or two. Anyway, I recorded that just before Hurricane Ida became clear that it was headed for New Orleans. And this is a picture I took after Hurricane Ida passed through. I actually stayed in the city and rode it out and had minimal damage to the house, but the city did lose power for an extended period. And this is a picture I took in City Park in the area where the Guy and Guild meeting that I convene every week. This is the area where we meet and have our regular nature meditations. So after the very first campaign event after Hurricane Ida, J.P. Morrell, the kind of the front runner in the race, came to me and he said, "Bart, can you believe how everything you've been saying at all these events was borne out by this storm?" It was kind of a crazy moment. But what were the big stories? The big stories that actually emerged from this particular race? I said it was going to have a lot of media coverage, and so it did. Well, the first big story that came out was when Kristen Palmer and Jared Brissett endorsed each other. That's right. They're competing for the same seat, but they endorsed each other because they didn't want J.P. Morrell to get it. And that seemed like it was going to be the big story, much to my chagrin, until this happened. Jared Brissett was arrested for DWI, and not for the first time. It was his actual third arrest for DWI. So he basically suspended his campaign at that point, and that became the big story. Well, actually, there was one other big moment. This is at the big debate, the big what ended up being the big campaign event after Jared Brissett had suspended his campaign. So it's just the three of us there. And a lot of people watched this. And then somebody posted on Reddit this photo of the three of us and asked people to vote for which candidate do you want based on their footwear, based on their shoes. It all comes down to the shoes. And I'm the guy in the middle, if you don't recognize, wearing sandals. I won that. If the vote had been based on who people liked by their shoes, I would have won the race because everybody liked my sandals. Okay, so as crazy as it may seem, the whole thing eventually did wrap up. And let me give you a summation now, a summation of the campaign. It was 17 weeks. It was only supposed to be a 12-week campaign, by the way. The election was postponed for 5 weeks because of Hurricane Ida. It was the right thing for Louisiana, but it taxed my endurance, certainly. I had 6 members on my team. You know, a lot of times I felt like I was out there all alone, but I never really was. I had a few volunteers who really helped me at every step of the way. In particular, Marion Penny Freestat, who was the person who recruited me in the first place to run, she was by my side for a lot of it. Really appreciated that. I filled out a ton of questionnaires, 19 questionnaires, and I participated in 13 forums. I actually got 1 endorsement from the local Green Party. I got a grant from the National Green Party. I had 2 televised appearances, 1 radio interview, 1 newspaper interview, 5 podcast interviews, and zero signs, by the way. I did not have any physical print stuff. I did take out some print ads, but I had no flyers or signs or anything. That was an early decision that we made. I ran 26 radio ads. I had 2 bicycle accidents and spent $3,241. That's how much I raised, and I spent it all. And I was only predicted to get 2 percentage points. That was the one poll that we had. Let me show you the actual results. I know this is what people really think of when they hear results. You'll see that I did not come in first. I did not come in second. In fact, I came in last place out of 4. That's right. I was beat out even by the guy who suspended his campaign, Jared Brissett. But I did about 3 times better than expected, 4,776 votes. So I was pretty pleased with the results. Of course, JP Morrell got 8 times as many votes as me, but he spent well over 100 times my total budget. So got to put that into perspective. And what I learned, well, 2 things. Number one is I defined victory at the beginning as being if I can raise the profile of this issue of the climate crisis, which I talked about at every possible turn, that I would consider that a victory. And I do have a meeting set up with the victor, JP Morrell, to try to develop a relationship and promote these policies. So I consider that possibly a victory, but I have to say at the end of the road that running for office is a huge pain. It's a huge pain. It's very expensive. It's, of course, terrifying. And it is very time consuming, but it's something that everybody should do, I feel like. And I'm going to stop the recording there and just say with this final thought that I would encourage anybody with half a brain, half a heart, certainly anybody on this call, to consider running for office next. So that's the question I want to leave you with. Who is next? I'm going to stop the recording there.